Welcome to Score Business TV. In this series, experts share their opinion with business owners on a variety of topics. Today, we're presenting part 3 of a series of episodes addressing exit strategies. Today's topic is the 10-step business sales process. In part 1, we explore the important considerations sellers must understand before exiting their business. In part 2, our experts presented ways in which businesses are valued. Today, we're going to outline the steps in the selling process leading to a successful exit. We will have a free-flowing dialogue on each of these steps. But before we begin, I'm happy to introduce 2 experts in the field. First, we have Peter Gruits. Peter has had a long and distinguished career as a banker, realtor, and business owner, and he leads our exit strategy program for SCORE. He's the SCORE mentor, and SCORE, by the way, is a 55-year-old nationwide nonprofit organization providing free mentoring services to business owners. We're a resource partner of the Small Business Administration. And we're also happy to welcome Matthew LaPointe, principal at Blaylock Walters, PA, a Sarasota and Bradenton, Florida law firm. Matthew is a principal in the firm's business, corporate, and healthcare law practices. Matthew represents companies in all business sectors. Welcome, gentlemen. Today we're going to examine the 10-step exiting process. Step 1 is arrange for a professional or business intermediary to represent your company. Why would a seller of a business want to do that? Matthew, let's start with you.
Well, I think it's important to understand that just because you've built and know how to run a business, that doesn't mean you know how to sell that business. And there are experts in all kinds of fields, and there are experts in selling businesses. You should look for an investment banker or a business broker who has experience in your particular type of business. And, they can really add value. They understand your business. They understand the industry and who the potential buyers are. And I just think it'd be foolish not to use an expert in a case like that.
Peter, does SCORE function as a business intermediary for clients?
That's a good way to put it. I think one of the biggest challenges any small business represents or has is really how to use professional services. I mean, professional services are expensive. Professional services have a very unique niche that they have to get involved with. So what we do at SCORE is we have a team of exit strategists who in effect provide this confidential, free, and experienced mentoring that in effect helps a client understand what the process is all about and how to prepare themselves for, as Matt says, the professional services. You have to know that if you sit down with an attorney, that clock's ticking. You have to know if you're sitting down with a CPA, that clock's ticking. And if you go to them as a blank tablet and you say, okay, help me out, that clock's ticking. So what we've tried to do at SCORE is not take away from the fees of the professionals, but in effect say to the client, you have an opportunity to prepare to use a professional efficiently. And to use a professional efficiently means you need to know where you got to go. Where am I going? Why am I doing this? How am I going to do this? And what are some of the things that I don't know that in effect SCORE can help me with? So that's why we set up the exit strategy convention. I mean, Dennis, in your foresight on doing this, we really wanted to help existing businesses as much as we wanted to help brand new businesses. And so that's why we went in this direction.
Step 2 is conduct an in-depth review of the business, including financials, leases, contracts, assets, and liabilities. Can you elaborate on what a seller should do in that regard?
Absolutely. Peter and I were just discussing before the show how important it is to plan your exit strategy. And I found that if a client comes to me and says, I want to sell my business in the next 6 months or a year, I say, you're too late. You should have been here 5 years ago. I mean, you really do need to plan your strategy. And so I would say, really, 5 years ahead of time is the time to start planning. So when you talk about doing the in-depth review of your company, what we're looking at are, of course, from the legal side, we're mostly looking at contracts. we're making sure you have your management team under contract with appropriate non-competition clauses, with appropriate assignment of intellectual property clauses, depending upon the type of the business, of course. But the right kinds of documents in place there. If it's a business that's owned by more than one person, we have to make sure you have a good buy-sell agreement, a good agreement that discusses what happens when it's sold, how the two partners are going to handle that. You also want to look at intellectual property. Do you have the appropriate copyrights or patents or trademarks? You want to look at the vendor contracts or contracts with your customers. This is what buyers want. Buyers want to buy a business that has all these things in place. A buyer is not going to want to buy a business where the three key employees have no contract and could leave the day after the buyer buys the business. So this is the kind of in-depth review you need to do before you even think about marketing the business or talking with an investment banker or what have you. So those are the things that I would look for. On the financial side, mostly this would be the CPA, but I would get involved in this a little bit too. You want to see what do the tax returns look like? Has this company been doing a great deal of creative accounting? If they have, now's the time to clean that up before we go to sell.
I knew you were going to say that. Peter, how does the SCORE exit strategy team get involved with that step, with conducting in-depth reviews? Does the team get with the client and explain what they need to do, or?
Well, what we do as a mentor is we have like 3 different levels that we participate in. The first level is for you to tell your story. Tell your story to us as experienced and non-fee charging experts, and let us see if your story makes any sense. And as you tell your story, it's kind of like when you tell a joke. Sometimes you remember all the components and sometimes you don't. Well, we want you to tell a complete joke. So not that your business is a joke, but we need you to tell your whole story. Once you've told us your story, then we have to go back as your mentor and say, okay, let's validate that. Let's validate that your story really matches where you want to go. Why are you doing this? One of the big things that is missing in most small businesses that try to sell their business is the absence of a marketing plan. Well, I'm not going to own it anymore, so what do I have to worry about as far as a marketing plan? If you don't have a marketing plan and you're trying to sell the business to somebody else and they're looking to invest their money in it, they're going to say, well, I didn't want to buy a dead cat. I was looking to buy an ongoing business. So we at SCORE are more involved in trying to get your story together. Now, once you got your story together, you have to reduce that to writing. A lot of people can tell a great story, but when you reduce it to writing, they fall apart. So the SCORE Exit Strategy Mentor is there to help you reduce that to writing in such a way that you can communicate without having to tell a 2-hour story every time you sit down with somebody. So if you're going to use an attorney, you're going to use a CPA, you have to have an idea where you're trying to go.
The third step is obtain a business valuation. Why is a business valuation necessary?
Well, it's very important for the business owner to have reasonable expectations. In talking to business brokers and investment bankers who do this for a living, they tell me that is often their biggest problem, that the business owner thinks the business is worth a lot more than the market. And so it's important to have a business valuation done by an appropriately credentialed expert to come up with what is a fairly solid, reasonable expectation of what the company will sell for. And it makes it a lot easier when the business owner has in mind that reasonable number rather than a pie-in-the-sky number that really isn't practical.
Peter, can you weigh in on that?
I think a business owner needs to understand that there are ways to increase the value of the business, and that when you get an appraisal or you get a number in your head and then you look through all the financials, you look through the last 3 years, you do some pro formas, you look at your tax returns. As you go through that process with a SCORE mentor, in effect, you're going to begin to realize the reality of your situation. If it is that you want 3 times the earnings or the EBITDA or whatever is available, and maybe your EBITDA is not high enough. So you need to, in effect, engineer your business so that you can increase that value so you can get the number you're looking for. And that isn't offending somebody if you say, well, my business is worth $1 million. Well, maybe it isn't at this point in time, but maybe you could make it worth that as you go along.
And for our audience, EBITDA is earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation and amortization.
Yeah, and that would apply to larger businesses. Smaller businesses would be, in effect, we'd be looking at it after the tax return.
Okay, and they go by what's called SDE.
That's right.
Sales discretionary earnings, right, which includes their own salary, correct? Okay.
Yeah.
Step 4 is prepare a business prospectus. Matt, why don't you start with that one? What should a seller include in their business prospectus?
Sure. So again, a business prospectus, I would call it a selling document or a sales document. It's a document where the business broker or the investment banker would help you to draft what is essentially a marketing piece, okay? And it describes your business, describes in general who your customers are, it describes in general what your sales are, it describes your industry, your location geographically, and it's a marketing piece. It's to send out to potential buyers to get them interested in your business. The best thing would be if that sales document started some kind of a bidding war and you had multiple suitors trying to buy your business. That would be terrific. But putting that together is frankly not something that I get involved with as the attorney. It's generally the business owner in cooperation with the broker.
And that typically is done sent out as a blind memo. In other words, you don't mention the company's name, you may have a number there, and then they respond to that for more information, correct? And
that's
they'll be
right, Dennis,
interested in an NDA.
because obviously in this stage of your business sale, you really don't want it out there in public that such and such a business is for sale. You don't want your key employees to get nervous. Gee, what's the future? What's my future at this company? You don't want any of that. So you do need to keep it confidential. And so these marketing brochures are generally, they do not identify the name of the company, but they identify enough of the company and enough of the information to generate interest on the part of buyers.
Sure. Just as a point of interest, one of my companies had one. It was a one-pager, and it got 8 responses and 8 offers on the company. So it created a bidding war, and of course that drives the price up.
Yes.
So Peter, let's look at the SCORE, the exit strategy program, and how you get involved with a seller as relates to the business prospectus or business selling memo.
Well, we have spent time developing what we call an elevator pitch. In effect, to say, here's what my business is all about, here's what I do, here's how I do it, and this is why it's of value. So really, this is kind of an executive summary of a larger deal that you're looking at. And it allows the customer, the client, to in effect tell their story in an effective and compelling way. They don't do that the first time out. They've been working on their business for 20, 30 years, and they've never really had to tell their story. In particular, to tell their story based on what a buyer might be interested in. A SCORE mentor is going to listen and in effect say, well, you're off base a little bit there. You're going too far here. You need to bring it back. I need to have you, anchor that particular idea.
So you help them refine
Yes,
the
absolutely,
story
absolutely.
and bring it down to the basic issues that buyers will want to know.
And a broker is really just going to try to pick up the stuff that you've talked about and be creative in what they're going to write. So if you don't give them a good information, they're going to write a lousy listing. So you really want to, in effect, spend time to develop that. And SCORE is a great place to have that experience. We find when we do seminars and workshops that we have people do an elevator pitch, And the difference between their elevator pitch here and when they've worked with us down here is so significantly different, it's like you don't even see the same person.
That's great.
So it's very important that you have to exercise, you have to work to this. You can't do it just by talking in the shower.
Step 5, develop a marketing strategy. Now this applies more to Peter than you, Matt, but why don't you weigh in first and then we'll go to Peter.
Sure. Well, no, you're absolutely right. As the lawyer, I generally do not get involved in this sort of thing, other than to advise the client to be truthful. We certainly don't want to be, I mean, the puffery is okay, but we certainly don't want to have untruths in our marketing. But this actually relates back to the first question you asked, which was why hire an intermediary? Why use a broker or an investment banker? And this is why. These guys know first to whom to market, right? You don't take a scattershot approach when you're selling a business. You market the business to the people who are most likely to buy it. And that could be quite a small segment. It's not the universe. And so I think part of the marketing strategy is determining who are the potential buyers and figuring out the best way to get before them. So I'm sure SCORE probably helps the people do that. How do they do that?
The key to a marketing plan, of course, is to know who your target market is.
Right.
Just as you've said, you've got to really understand who you're trying to sell it to. And once you have that target market down, you've got to understand your competition. You have to understand the value proposition that you're bringing to those customers. And in effect, how are you going to deliver that? How are you going to market towards them, and what issues do you have to do? One of the things that I think is really compelling in a selling brochure is to say, I have a marketing plan, but I don't have enough money to execute the whole thing. And that's one of the reasons why I'm looking to either raise money or sell my business, is my business will do so much better if, in effect, I'm able to institute this marketing plan. I'm able to say I can do this advertising, I have this target market in focus, I'm in effect being able to expand my services, and for the $10,000 or $20,000 I have to invest in my marketing plan, I'm going to get back $100,000, $200,000 of sales. That is a compelling argument that most experienced business people forget. And we as SCORE mentors, we as SCORE as an organization, really push on that and really look to, in effect, develop a comprehensive, good, solid marketing plan. Rick Ross, one of our co-chairmans with Dennis, has one of his favorites is having a marketing calendar. Lay out the year. What are you going to do throughout the year to market your business to more of your existing clients and to new clients?
Well, that same principle would apply in the sale of the business itself. That broker or investment banker would use those same principles in marketing the business as the product. I mean, you're thinking, you've gone through all your life working on your business, marketing your products. Well, now you're marketing yourself.
Yes.
You're marketing your business, and so it's important to figure out how best to position your business for sale.
So, Peter, what about advice for removing relatives, having your children on the payroll, that kind of thing?
As they say, it's family. Well, I think it's very important to understand what we've talked before about the fact that we at SCORE are there to help you stop up the value leaks. And you're leaking value if you don't have the best possible people working for you. You're leaking value if you're not, in effect, re-engineering your balance sheet and your income statement. One of the areas that people don't understand, we see all kinds of financial statements. Small businesses don't focus on the cost of goods sold like they should, because they put everything in expenses. You should, in effect, be measuring what your gross margin is and, in effect, how it changes month to month. And the same thing applies with your family. Are they working full? Are they goofing off? Are you holding them responsible? And it's a difficult issue to do, but if you're trying to get the most money for your business that's going to, in effect, help you pay for your retirement, you better get active on this. And SCORE helps you to determine that. Our SCORE mentors are trying to focus on what is going to make the most value decisions for your business as you take it to market.
And where might be some places that you would list your company for sale?
Well, there's probably a dozen different ones. Biz buy sell is one that is probably the largest one. And you may want to, in effect, list some kind of little tombstone ad in an association that you might belong to. There's a whole series. We go over that in reference to trying to market that, and that's something you should be aware of. There are a lot of businesses for sale, and there are a lot of businesses that never get sold. And you're not going to get your business sold if you don't step up your game.
I've heard the percentage of 10 to 20% of the businesses that are out there that are listed do not sell. Does that sound about right, Matt?
I actually think it's higher.
Yeah.
I do. And I think the reason is a lot of the business owners don't do what we've been talking about here. They don't get good advice. They don't get a good broker or intermediary. They don't do some of the things we've been talking about. You know, you mentioned a place to list the business. And in addition to the things Peter was talking about, I would say don't forget about your competitors.
Yeah.
I've had many clients who've been acquired by competitors. When they're ready to go and the broker gets involved, that's one of the people to whom they send that marketing pamphlet. And a lot of times the competitors see that as a strategic acquisition to expand their footprint, expand their business. So it's a good place to look.
Well, the next step to that, of course, is when someone has shown an interest in your executive summary.
Yep.
Then, in effect, that's when it comes down to non-disclosure agreements. That's
Sure.
when it comes down to a letter of intent. That's when it really is a very full-blown thing. That's really when an attorney is there to do the job necessary to protect you.
Yeah, that is when we really ramp it up.
And of course, and near the end is the due diligence process, which is always lots of fun.
Right.
And can you just explain briefly what that is?
Oh, sure. So once you've got a purchase and sale agreement in place, whether it's a stock purchase agreement or asset purchase agreement, a very important part of that is the buyer has an opportunity to kick the tires, to do what's called a due diligence investigation, to investigate all of those things that were in that marketing piece to make sure they're really true. Check your contracts, check your financials, check your product, your intellectual property, your corporate documents, you know, that you have the proper bylaws and all that legal stuff. All of that stuff gets really run through the ringer. It can actually be quite an arduous process. And I often sit down with my clients before that process to prepare them for it. Because the business seller oftentimes, they'll sometimes get their back up a bit. Well, why are they asking me that? Well, why do they need to know that? Well, I need to prepare that client for these kinds of questions and help them understand that it's part of the situation. They're spending good money to buy your business. They want to make sure that they know what they're getting.
Matt, you hit the point that I wanted you to, which was relating it back to the marketing strategy. Because it really does. You have to, if you make representations and warranties, the buyer is going to look
Yes.
under the sheets and see what's really there.
That's right.
So
you have
you've
to
gotta-
put your money where your mouth
Exactly,
is. Yeah.
right. This has been a very complex topic and we didn't get but halfway through it. So in our next episode, we're going to continue with steps 6 through 10. Do you have any final thoughts? Matt, I'll start with you on this topic.
My final thought would just be plan. I think, as you say, it's a complicated topic. We've gone through these first 5 steps, and to me, what runs through all of them is planning. This is not something that you should expect to do immediately. You should think ahead about when you want to exit your business and plan for it.
Peter, how about you?
Don't sign anything. That's my first statement to you. Until you plan, until you know what you're doing, the Sharpies will pick your bones. Don't sign anything. Get a SCORE mentor to help you out with this, to get through this pothole road that you have to walk on. So if I didn't say it emphatically enough, I'll say it again. Don't sign anything.
Matt, how can our viewers reach you?
The best way to reach me would be email, mlapointe@blaylockwalters.com, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody about this stuff. I love it. It's my passion.
Peter, how about you?
For a qualified SCORE mentor, you need to go to score.org and go through the process. We are the Minnesota SCORE chapter in Sarasota and Bradenton, and just request a mentor, and we'll be more than happy to talk to you.
And that price is?
Zero. It's a very effective pricing scheme that we have.
And Matt can't say the same. But anyway, I would like to thank our guests for appearing on this episode of SCORE Business TV. I'd also like to thank our sponsor, Wells Fargo. Please tune in for our next episode when we continue part 2 with the 10 steps in the selling process for your business. Until then, this is Dennis Zink saying thank you and have a great day.